Hi, it's Stacy Tuttle. I'm going to take just a few minutes to talk about hoppers. And I'm really going to focus on having conversations with littles because my guess is most people aren't going to see this movie for themselves. If you're watching this video, you probably saw it with a kid or have a kid in your life who's seen it and who has seen it that you want to have a conversation with. So let's talk about how to use the movie, and I'm really going to kind of focus on the main ideas that you get mostly from the preview. I'm not going to get too, it gives you plenty of context to have the conversation. I did see the movie. I also slept through a large part of the middle, so I'm pretty clear on the beginning and the end. But even still, I have more than enough from just the preview, which I think should be encouraging. That sometimes I think we make this harder than it needs to be, and it's really about asking questions and then looking at main themes, right? So let's talk about a few of the themes. From the preview alone, we know that one of the main themes is caring for the environment. And the general premise is that this girl went to this place in nature with her grandmother to kind of get alone, to get calm, recentered, whatever. This place was super special with her and her grandma. And progress is about to wipe it out, development. And so she is trying to save it. And the way to do that, she realizes there's technology that can put her brain in a beaver body where she can communicate with nature. And so she knows there's some tweaks they can make that will help change it's like if the beavers relocate back to they had left, but if they come back to that area, then it's a protected area and technology, development will be stopped, something along those lines. So she's trying to change. So the first part of this would be, let's go back to Genesis and understand the command to care for the environment, that God calls us stewards of the world. And what does that look like? Where does that fit into? We have to steward nature, but we also have to steward humanity, and humanity is growing and needs a place to go. So is nature. So what do we do with that? There is a tough tension there. And depending on the level of your kid that you're talking to, really can depend on how deep and how complex you get in that conversation. So I would say that's point one. Second point is this idea of being incarnate. First off, we have Jesus who was incarnate. He came in the flesh. And then as we go, missionaries, they go to a place to live as a people. And as they do that, you can earn the right to have a voice into someone else's life because, for one, you begin to understand them. And you also can have more compassion for them because you begin to understand what it is to be like them. So there's a couple of different issues in there, and I would distinguish that there's super correlated and connected, but maybe different. The one is being in someone's shoes, which can allow you to understand and have compassion for what they're going through. So you can do that from a place of understanding. There's also the idea of being incarnate in the flesh, which gives you, it does give you understanding, but that focus to me is more about them having a trust for you, right? So because she was in the flesh as a beaver, the other beavers and animals trusted her because she was one of them. However, becoming one of them gives her the ability to understand how they see the world. So she learns what are the laws of being in this kingdom, right? It's a little different than the human kingdom. So there's different laws of operating and things that she has to learn to understand. She has to learn what their fears are, what their relationships are like. So there's that living in their shoes to gain understanding. There's also being incarnate, which gains you trust. So both of those connections, again, we've got Jesus who came in the flesh and lived as one of us, is, like, to me, a huge connection point that we can use from this movie. And then how you go with that will totally depend on where the kid is that you're talking to. Do they know Jesus at all? Do they see the benefit of that? And so I'm not going to try to tell you how to use that. I want to give you some themes and I want to jump off of this. But so there's those things. And then there's, let me say too, and this is where, depending on the level of the kid, this is a little bit deeper and maybe darker in some ways, but there are people, and very simply, you have the wolf who dresses in the sheep's clothes, right? The wolf in sheep clothing that uses the idea of being incarnate to gain trust, but they're actually still a predator. They aren't trying to gain understanding other than to use it against. If they understand where the sheep go, maybe they use it against them, but they're really ultimately not trying to gain compassion or understanding or awareness. They're simply trying to gain for their own ends, right? They want dinner. So there is some of that happens in this movie. And even the girl realizes, I should have been gaining understanding, but there was a part of her that was using people for her own agenda. She wanted to protect that place because it was special to her. And she used other people to get her own people and relationships, the ones she was incarnate with. She used all the people around her in a certain way to get what she wanted. You also have the politician who was all about his own end. And again, was gathering the favor of the people, but he wanted to win. And so you have people who are using other people who pretend to be, in some ways, one of the population. They pretend to be in the flesh, incarnate, and yet for different agendas. So this idea of using people and even of being predators, especially in a world where you've got kids who are getting online and things, and they need to understand that there are people who will use they will pretend to be like them and be friends with them so that they can gain their trust, but it's sinister. And I'm not saying you want to go there necessarily with your kid. That depends on the kid, but this might be a very safe way to even, in a very G-rated kind of way, to have some conversations about how do you learn which is which. When are they like Jesus? What's the difference in somebody who's trying to understand and have compassion and become truly friends with you versus somebody who's using that for their own agenda? So that's a really deep, difficult conversation that might actually come about because of a movie like this. So I hope that equips you to have any number of interesting conversations and maybe some surprising ones. But all right, that's what I have today. Thank you very much.